Before we get into the video, subscribe to Hyper Hooper Basketball and like this video. With the NBA playoffs approaching on April 16th, the NBA playoff seeds have been chosen, along with the play-in teams, and we'll be predicting all of that in today's video. So without further ado, let's predict the NBA playoffs and play-in. Starting in the Western Conference with the Timberwolves and Clippers, I think the Timberwolves will win their play-in game against the Clippers and advance to be the 7th seed in the West. I think the 10 seed Spurs will beat the 9 seed Pelicans and will advance to play the LA Clippers in the final play-in game in the West. But I think the Clippers will officially shut out the Spurs and advance to the NBA playoffs. In the East, the 7 seed Cavs will play the 8 seed Nets, and the Nets will win this game. The 9 seed Hawks will play against the 10 seed Hornets, and I think LaMelo Ball will have an incredible performance and win that game versus the Atlanta Hawks. Then Charlotte will play Cleveland in the battle for the 8 seed, but in the end the Cavs will win that game. And that brings us to our NBA playoff predictions. Grab some popcorn, eat a snack, sit back and relax as you watch my NBA playoff predictions. So let's get right into it. The 1 seed Suns will host the 8 seed Clippers in the playoffs, and the Suns, who, by the way, got a 64-18 record this season, have been absolutely incredible. Devin Booker and Chris Paul are both healthy, DeAndre Ayton is healthy, and most of their star role players like Mikal Bridges and Jay Crowder will be healthy as well. This team is really hard to stop, especially when they are great shooters like they have been all this season and they were last season. Don't forget this team made a finals run last season, but this is a rematch from the NBA Western Conference Finals in last year's playoffs when the Suns played the LA Clippers, because the Clippers were actually really good last season and they faced off against the Suns without Kawhi Leonard, but then lost in 6 games. In my opinion, the Suns will win this series 4-0, just because the Clippers don't have Kawhi and they don't have a lot of their great pieces to counter the Suns. The 2-seeded Grizzlies will play against the 7-seeded Timberwolves, two of the best teams in the NBA. Now, I think that the Memphis Grizzlies will win this series in 6 games, just because they have home court advantage, and also because I think they're going to make an NBA Finals run because of their chemistry and depthness. Now, the Grizzlies are a young team and do not have that much playoff experience, but neither are the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I think in the end, this Grizzlies team will come out on top because of their depth and energy to win as a young team. I can compare this team to kind of like the Utah Jazz of last year's playoffs. Sure, they didn't make a finals run, but they were a young team who made it to the second round and at least put up some good numbers. So I think that the Memphis Grizzlies will win the series in 6 games and advance to the second round. The next one is a bit hard to predict. The 3-seed Warriors will play the 6-seeded Nuggets. Sure, Nikola Jokic has barely any help and will have to put the whole team on his back because he has really only got Aaron Gordon as their second best player. Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray will both be out and will not help him in the playoffs like they have in past years. But Stephen Curry, the leader of the Golden State Warriors, might miss the playoff opener. And openers in the playoffs are sometimes a big indication of who is going to win this game, especially if it is a blowout. And when you go down 1-0 in a series, it is not fun because you have to go win 2 games in a row to take a lead. And I think that the Denver Nuggets and Golden State Warriors are both going to struggle tremendously in this series. Both teams are going to lose 3 games, which will come down to a Game 7, but in the end, the Golden State Warriors will win in 7 games because Stephen Curry will probably be in the series for most of it, and Nikola Jokic can just not put a team on his back that has star players that are injured, and the only player that is really relevant that is on his back is Aaron Gordon. Last one in the Western Conference is the 5-seeded Jazz versus the 4-seeded Mavericks. But with Luka Doncic just getting a strain in his calf last night, he most likely will not be able to play for probably first 4 or 5 games of the playoffs, and that will swing in the Utah Jazz's favor so much. And I think that in this series, the Dallas Mavericks are going to lose in 5 games just because of the severity of Luka Doncic's injury, and he means so much to the team that it just is not going to be good for the Dallas Mavericks. Who are they going to turn to? Spencer Dinwiddie? And the power of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert's insane duo doing lobs and Rudy Gobert with the incredible defense is just not going to work for the Mavericks. They are not going to be able to stop it, and in the end, the Jazz win in 5 games. This one is an easy one. The Miami Heat face up against the 8-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers. And with the Miami Heat having so much playoff experience, Kyle Lowry, and yes, he chokes in the playoffs a lot, but he does have a lot of playoff experience. Jimmy Butler is one of the clutchest players in the league and led the Heat to a finals run 2 years ago. And you know what Bam Adebayo can do in the clutch on defense. This Cleveland Cavaliers team is just not going to be able to contend with the wrath of the Miami Heat because of no playoff experience and also not a lot of clutchness and the loss of Colin Sexton. They've been fine this season without Sexton, but it's going to hurt them because the Heat have so many guards that the centers will have to switch onto and get destroyed in the pick and roll. So in the end, I think the Heat win in 4. This next one is the 2-seeded Bucks versus the 7-seeded Brooklyn Nets. I've been hearing a lot of people say as a hot take that the Brooklyn Nets will make history by becoming the first 7 seed to win the NBA Finals, but I just don't think that's going to happen. The Milwaukee Bucks are the defending champions, and playing them in the NBA playoffs will be quite hard. I mean, even with the Nets almost fully healthy last season in the playoffs, they still lost in 7 games versus the Bucks, who are the defending champions and are even more scary than last year, which is debatable. So I think that the Milwaukee Bucks will win in 6 just because the Nets will not be able to handle any of the Bucks' weapons from 3, and they're going to have to build a wall for Giannis to stop him, and I just don't think they can do that. Andre Drummond is a good rim protector, but who else do they have that can stop Giannis? Andrew Holiday and Chris Middleton. It just won't work. The 3-seeded Celtics, who by the way have been on a historic run lately, and the 6-seeded Chicago Bulls will play each other in the first round. Now, both of these teams' second half of the season took a wildly different turn. While the Boston Celtics made a success story out of something that was not going to be in the first half of the season, after being the 8th seed and even lower sometimes in the standings, they climbed their way up to the 3 seed. But that is just not the case with the Chicago Bulls. Once the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, they just could not handle that, and they ended up becoming the 4 seed, then the 5 seed, and then the 6 seed, not following expectations and getting lower in the standings. Now, both of these teams match up incredibly well against each other, with 2 MVP candidates going at it who play the same position, Jason Tatum and DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan, who will be a fun matchup to see and probably will be guarding each other in the series. The Bulls have more star power, yes. They have Zach LaVine, they have Nikola Vucevic, they have Lonzo Ball. But the Boston Celtics have a bit more chemistry with each other. The Celtics have figured it out in the last few games of the regular season, and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, you know what they can do. Daniel Tice will definitely help out, Al Horford will, and the Bulls are great. And the Celtics are also great. It's kind of hard to predict who will win because of both teams' playing styles. I think the Bulls will win, though, in 7 games. And it'll be probably like a really close game in Game 7. It'll probably be like 120 to 118 or something like that. And I think the Bulls will win in 7 just because they have more star power. And more star power gets you more points in playoff games. The 4-seeded Philadelphia 76ers will play against the 5-seeded Toronto Raptors. And this is a rematch from the 2019 semifinals. And yes, the Raptors won in 7 in that series because they had Kawhi Leonard, who hit the dagger shot in the Philadelphia 76ers' hearts. But both teams are very different now. Danny Green is not on the Raptors anymore. He's actually on the 76ers, his former team, which he played with the Raptors in that series. And Kawhi Leonard left the Raptors after they won a championship, which was weird for some reason. I'll make another video on that soon because Kawhi Leonard's mind is hard to understand. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So anyway, the Philadelphia 76ers are going to win in 4 games because the Raptors don't have anyone to turn to beside probably Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet. I'm not saying they're not a great team. They certainly are. Scotty Barnes is incredible, and in my opinion, he should win Rookie of the Year. He's been absolutely insane defensively this season. But when you look at the duo of Joel Embiid and James Harden, it's going to be scary for the Raptors defense to handle them because Harden and Embiid will run the pick and roll all day, and Harden will probably get like 12 assists per game in this series. And the Sixers have insane shooters who they can kick it out to, like Danny Green, Shake Milton, and Fortune Korkmaz. But the Raptors really only have a Gary Trent Jr., who's a great shooter for them, and Fred VanVleet. And in the end, the Sixers win in 4 games just because they have more depth and more playoff experience than this young Raptors team. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Click subscribe, turn notifications on, like, share, comment, all the good stuff. And as always, I'm your boy Hyper Hoover Basketball, and we're out.
Prepare for light speed.